straight away, let's get into it. What should our viewers be concentrating on in terms of protecting themselves against world events? Because there's so much going on.
Yeah, I think it's become a very tricky environment. If anything, I think the bank stresses of the last several weeks have narrowed the runway for a soft landing. On the one side, you still have inflation risk, and on the other side, it now looks like recession is much more likely to happen sooner than later.
Narrowed the landing path for a soft landing, and that's something that's come up. But as my colleague Jeff was just saying in the studio, markets looking great from the December lows, rallying hard in Europe, rallying hard on the Nasdaq. All those concerns we had about growth stocks disappeared now, despite the fact that money is going to stay tight for quite a considerable amount of time. Are we missing something in the markets?
I mean, I think, you know, different markets react at different speeds to what's coming at them. And typically we see equities and credit acting very late to the onset of recession. From that perspective, the bond market has reacted in its traditional role. Unlike last year when it didn't serve as a safe asset, it's discounted some significant risk of a recession. And from that perspective, that's often offered some cushioning to the equity market and the credit markets. But it doesn't mean that a recession is less likely. It doesn't mean that those markets won't have to cope with the consequences of recession.
So as far as you're concerned, and again, it's just an idea, you're a strategist rather than kind of a soothsayer or like Sybil or something. The fact of the matter is the equity markets is getting it wrong at the moment and the risks of recession are as high as ever.
Well, I never would say a market gets it wrong. No. You know, we don't know when, but we do think it has not yet digested what is likely to happen over the next 6 to 12 months in terms of recession risk. Again, there is some probability that we do still manage a soft landing, but that path is narrowed. I think the challenge is that there is now something happening that is outside the Fed's control in the banking sector. And we all have our views in terms of how bad that gets. But my own sense is that, you know, we're not facing a banking crisis, that there will be some tightening in credit conditions. It will bring recession forward. It's not the end of the world, but it's certainly not discounted in the equity market.
And something that came up last night, and I know you and I were both interested in, was the compromise that the policymakers have to make in this whack-a-mole world where I want to control price a bit, I want to look after the instability on price, but I can't necessarily concentrate on price because I need to look at the financial market stability as well. Is the compromise on A going to affect B or B on A?
I think certainly the compromise on whichever A and B were. But I do think, you know, it's the case where this is now a two-front war. We're still fighting inflation, but at the same time we're fighting these uncertainties in the banking sector.